Hey guys, welcome back to Next Level Gardening. Have you ever planted tomatoes only and end up with a tangled mess of vines, yellowing leaves, mildew, bugs you never saw coming, and very little tomatoes to show for it? If so, this is the video for you. I'm going to share the one tomato trick that actually works. And it's worked for me for years. In fact, this is the 10th year of me using it. Not only that, I've heard from thousands of you who've tried it, and it works for you too. It's the method I come back to year after year for tidy, productive tomato vines, even in small spaces. The first time I knew this was a game changer was when I grew 500 tomatoes in a 9x4 raised bed. And not cherry tomatoes, actual big juicy tomatoes. My first few years of growing tomatoes, I used the flimsy wire cage method. I barely pruned, I kind of just let them do their thing. And for the first 2 months, I was like, man, look at these awesome big tomato plants I'm growing. I'm a natural. And then it turned into a jungle. Branches everywhere. I couldn't even see the fruit until it was overripe or picked off by some pest like a squirrel. Every time I watered, I soaked all the leaves, and by July, disease showed up. And the whole time, aphids and hornworms had a party. And the worst part, out of 6 tomato plants, I might have got 12 tomatoes that I was proud of. But I finally learned about something different. Single stemming and string trellising, and everything changed. Let's break it down. This is how large-scale tomato producers grow tomatoes. They can fit more plants and more fruit into a space rather than letting the vines ramble. We can do this ourselves on a micro scale. I grow my tomatoes vertically using a string for support instead of a cage or a stake. The string hangs from an overhead support. It could be a trellis bar, greenhouse rafter, simple wood frame, or even the eaves of your house. So instead of just letting the plant grow into a huge giant jungle of a bush, you grow it to just one main leader. That means regularly removing suckers, the little shoots that grow in the junction between a leaf and the main stem. I call that the armpit. This concentrates the plant's energy into growth and fruit production rather than just spending all of its energy making more branches and more leaves that aren't going to produce anything but more branches and more leaves. It's tidy, it's efficient, and it makes a huge difference. If you live in zone 6 through 11, there's one little tweak you can do to this system to actually increase your harvest by 30 to 40%. Now we'll get there in a minute. Hang on, because first I want to tell you why this works. You know what? You're here. I appreciate that you're here. Let's just talk about it first, but you have to promise to stick around till after that so I can tell you why it works, because that's going to allow you to see the big picture. Let me walk you through how I set mine up step by step. First, you're going to need some kind of overhead support to hook the strings onto. Like I said, it could be the eaves of your house if it's a south-facing wall. It could be a horizontal bar between 2 T-posts. It could be a teepee, a bamboo teepee with one string hooked to the middle and running down the center to the plant. However, the easiest and most effective way is to build your own structure. Now, this can be as elaborate or as simple as possible. I've had thousands of people from around the world send me pictures of how they have either copied my system or made it their own. And it's amazing. I'll try to put some up here so you can see them. In my case, I like to keep it simple. A 4x4 post vertically, have 2 2x4s across to another 4x4 post. And I have 3 sections here, but you could just have one. And then across that, I have some 2x3s going horizontally. Then I've got some eye bolts in the bottom of this side and this side on each one. Now you can also use smaller wood. At my last house, I had 2x4s as the vertical uprights and 2x3s across the top. And then little cross braces, I had just furring strips, they call them. I think they're 1x2s. Now I will tell you the 1x2s, after about 2 to 3 years, they get a little rotten and weak. And that's a lot of weight hanging on them with those tomato vines. So I would go with the 2x3s at least on top. Using twine, tie the top securely, either to the piece of wood or to the eye bolt, and anchor the bottom either by burying it under the root ball of the plant or by tying it into a stake in the ground. You want the line to be perfectly vertical, so Plant it directly under where you have the string tied on. This is where that little tweak comes in that I was telling you about for 30% more production. Zone 6 through 11, I'm talking to you. Typically what happens is throughout the season, the tomato grows up the string, reaches the top by midsummer, and at that point you would cut off the top of the plant, because if anything goes beyond that and tries to ripen, it's not going to have time before your frost anyway. Now we're talking about zone 6 or lower. If you don't cut it off and your first frost comes, you know, in like early September, late August, it's not going to have enough time to ripen all the fruit it's already got on there. It's going to be putting a lot of its energy into continuing to grow. Now, even if your frost date doesn't come until December and you were to grow it the typical way, you still have to cut it off, because once the plant reaches the top, it has nowhere else to go except to go back down, fall back down on itself, which is going to get heavy, it's going to break, it's going to be a mess, it's going to cover up ripening fruit. This will make more sense when you stick around to hear why we do this. I'm not going to get into it yet. But in zone 6 through 11, where you have a longer season and all the extra that would grow past the top is going to be wasted, this is where the tweak comes in. So I'm going to show you how to do this both ways. So I already showed you one way of burying the string underneath the plant you're planting. But what happens if you've already got your tomato plants out and they're a foot or two tall right now and you're just now seeing this video? Totally fine. If your tomato plant's already growing, just take a landscape staple, stick it in on either side of the tomato at the base, and then just tie the string to that. So you can do that for either way of doing it, but now we're going to talk about the tweak. If you follow the line up, rather than it ending in a tied knot onto a post, you end with this. This ingenious item is a tomato hook. It will take your tomato production to the next level if you live in zone 6 through 11. So like I mentioned, the typical way, the tomatoes grow to the top of the string, you cut the top off, ripen what's there, your season's done. But if you've got all these extra months after that, even weeks, instead of it ending, once the tomato plant reaches the top of the structure, you're not cutting anything off. You're unhooking the hook, letting out a couple of winds of the twine, and lowering the tomato plant. Now you can either hang the twine back in the same spot, or if you've got two runs like I do, you can move the tomato hook over to the next one, and then the one that was across from it, you can move it there and just move each one down the line one spot. That gives the vine somewhere to go. I did this one year and I ended up with 16 to 20 feet of one vine going around my system. It's a tidier way of doing it, but if it's too confusing or if you just have a small one-line space, you can just let it down right where it is and the tomato vine will slowly coil up down at the bottom. Now I get a lot of questions as what do you do with all the leaves at the bottom? Well, typically you're plucking off any leaves that turn yellow or look old, and so really it's just a bare vine there. You might have a few almost ripe tomatoes, but the part that's going to start coiling around is not really going to have any leaves on it at the point that it's ready to do that. These tomato hooks work so well. It's the only product we've ever brought on and sold directly from our website, and we searched high and low to find the best price and the highest quality. You're going to get some hooks out there that barely have any twine, or the twine is not UV protectant, so it's going to snap before the end of the season. We've had hooks that actually bend under the weight of the vine. So these are on our website. I'll put a link down below. They're the best quality for the best price on the internet. We've never raised the price in 5 years. Now, in order to get this to work, you have to single stem them. And that means a bit of maintenance. Every week or two, walk by your plants and look for any of the growth coming out of the armpit, which is where the leaf meets the stem, and pluck it out. Any and all of them. Now, I have had people say, you're just taking off tomatoes. No, you're really not. If you follow these stems, they could be a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet long and never produce a tomato. And they take all the plant's energy, take up all the space. Growing it like I'm growing them, I can space them a foot to a foot and a half apart. If you don't pinch the suckers out. You have to allow 3 to 4 feet for each tomato, and they're still going to run into each other, and you're going to be searching for the few tomatoes that it actually produces. The productive flowers are going to come out right along the stem. So you're not going to mistake them for a sucker because they're not coming out of the armpit. They come directly off the main stem. Another bit of maintenance as you're checking for the suckers, you go by and you just take the stem and twist it around the twine as it grows. You can also use tomato clips to secure it if you want, but they're not necessary. And just take some extra precaution when you're doing the twisting because you don't want to snap the stem. Do it, if you can, later in the day when it's been warm out, and so the plant's a little more floppy and a little more flexible than right early in the morning when it's full of water and more snappy. Now, if you do snap the tip off, it's okay. Go down to the next sucker that's down there and train that up as the main leader. Because it is now the top guy, it's no longer going to have the tendency to just grow and not produce fruit. It's now going to have what they call apical dominance, and all the hormones go into that as now the new lead guy. Okay, you promised you'd hang around, and I'm glad you did, because knowing why this works makes all the difference. The main reason it works is because the plant is not putting all of its energy into producing these side shoots that are never going to produce as much as the main stem. The second thing is, especially if you're in a humid climate, there is a lot more airflow when you grow them like this. When you have a mass of vines, it almost never dries out underneath there, even in a dry climate. But if you've got rain all the time in summer, you're going to have a lot of disease because there's no airflow through the plant. By taking out the suckers and growing them up a main stem, there's a lot more flow through there, and it's going to be a lot healthier. It's also easier to spot problems. I mean, with a big, huge, sprawling vine, you can barely spot the bright red tomatoes, let alone a hornworm that blends in perfectly with the plant, or aphids, or any of the problems that could be coming along. You don't have the ability to see that early and stop it. And it's just easier to pick the fruit. You can see it hanging right there. You know it's ripe, you know it's ready, and you don't have to, be waist deep, bending over into a vine, digging for it. If you have a problem with rats and squirrels eating your tomatoes, it's a lot easier for them to do when they have the cover to hide in all those vines. It's also space saving. Let's face it, tomatoes can get huge if they're grown the traditional way. And you might, in a 4x10 bed, get 4 plants, if you're lucky. But doing it this way, you can get about 15 plants. So if you want to try more varieties, if you just want to have better production in a smaller space, this is the way to go. I've been gardening for 30 years and I have tried every tomato hack that has come down the pike. Epsom salts, towers, not pruning, adding fish heads or pennies or eggshells to the hole. Some help a little, some just make a mess. But this one, single stem trellising with the hook especially, has been a game changer that I will never not do. It's not trendy, it's not flashy, but it's real gardening that works year after year. So that's it. If this helped you, let me know in the comments. What type of growing have you done? Have you tried string training? Are you a tomato cage rebel? Or are you planting for the first time and just hoping for the best? Whatever your style, happy growing. I'm going to put a link to a video right here if you're wondering, can I do this method in a container? Yes, you can. I'll see you guys next time.